Hi and welcome back. It is week 5 of our blanket and we're on to our final panels before joining the border. So we have really pretty sunny shades for you this week. Hopefully by the time you're watching this, the sun will be shining and we're well into spring. So we're warming up our colour palette and I really hope we're getting some warm weather as well. We, this week, are using tapestry crochet. If that fills you with fear, don't let it. You've already done all of the techniques in the blanket that you're going to need for this week. We've carried yarns and we've done colour changes. And that is really all there is to it for this week. For the most part, we're going to be working with 2 colours. We're going to treat the central part of our flowers slightly differently. So we're not going to carry this yarn all the way through, but I'll talk you through that in detail in the next part of the video. The main stitch for this panel again is a half treble, and also this week we have a little chart which is going to accompany the pattern. So depending on how familiar you are with tapestry crochet, if you're more of a visual learner and you want to follow the chart once you get started, then it is there for you to refer to. Equally, if it fills you with fear and you just want to follow the written instructions, they are also written out for you so you can work through those at your own pace. One of the things to note about this panel is that we're working on a slightly larger stitch repeat. So whereas for our other panels, we were pretty much working within a 15 centimetre square each time. So for instance, in week 1, we had sort of 3 repeats of our flowers here. For our tapestry crochet section, just to give ourselves these really big, lovely blooms and to make them work over a larger area, we have a slightly larger pattern repeat. So you'll note that the chart almost stops in the middle of this flower and in the middle of this flower. But when we work them together in longer rows, it gives us this really lovely large flower pattern repeat. So again, you can work through the pattern. It's not really something that you have to remember the stitch count for because it is all laid out for you. But I just wanted to point that out, that due to the larger nature of the kind of print we're creating, we're working over a slightly larger pattern repeat. In the video, we're going to focus on how to treat this little center section of our flower differently, how to use that as more of an intarsia crochet, whereas the rest of the panel is your more traditional tapestry crochet. So let's work through together our panels that we'll need for week 5. Here's how mine is looking at the end of row 5. I'm obviously working still over that smaller surface area for this panel, panel 12 and panel 13. So yours will look longer, it may look a little bit different, but this is the pattern repeat that we're all working to. I've finished on a cream stitch and I need the cream on my hook for the start of row 6. So that is exactly what we need to have. I've turned my work and I'm going to start with a chain 2. Now the reason that I'm highlighting this row is because the previous rows we've been working with our 2 yarns, carrying the one that is not currently active on our hook. But for this row, we're actually going to be bringing in a 3rd colour, and that's going to be for the centre of our flowers. We're going to treat it in a little bit of a different way. Rather than carrying it all the way along, we're going to wind off a length and use it in what I suppose is more of an intarsia term. So I'll show you, of course, when we get to it, but we're going to bring in the golden yarn and just use it for the section we need and leave the yarn tails hanging behind the work when we don't. So for the start of row 6, as I said, I've chained 2 in cream. I'm then going to work 2 half trebles in cream. So that chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch. Changing to lemon on the last yarn over of that round. We then want to work 14 half trebles in lemon. So that's 14 whilst carrying the cream. So on the final yarn over of that 14th stitch, we want to change back to cream. And because I've worked quite a long section again here without changing colour, I'm just going to very gently pull on the cream to make sure that it's not curled up inside the stitches that it's being carried inside. So we're going to yarn over and complete that stitch in cream. We now want to work 5 half trebles in cream before bringing in our new colour, our golden colour. So on the final yarn over of our 5th half treble in cream, I'm going to bring in our golden colour. But because this is such a long panel and we have a couple of different instances where we're going to need this golden colour, rather than just attaching the colour from our main yarn ball, I'm actually going to wind off I'm calling it a sort of 2 arms lengths, but if you want to get technical, we've said 150 centimetres in the pattern. Essentially, we need enough for a couple of rows here in the middle. And in each instance where we're using golden, this is what we're going to do. We're going to bring it in. Now, because I'm happy with working with this as a sort of length and allowing it to just dangle down behind the work when we're not using it, I'm just going to leave it here as a sort of long tail. But if you want to, you can wind it round into a little bobbin or a little ball and make that slightly more manageable and easier for yourself. But give it a go and see. If you find yourself getting in a tangle, there's an option. So we're going to yarn over here with golden and bring that in, leaving ourselves enough of a tail end to weave in. And we're going to complete that stitch in cream by pulling through. So we've now got our golden colour on our hook, and we do want to keep carrying our 2 previous yarns. So this is the only time that we're going to do this, but we want to carry both our cream and our lemon along with us. So we've just made our 5 trebles in cream, 5 half trebles, in cream, and now we want to make 4 half trebles in golden. So I'm going to yarn over and making sure that I'm carrying all the yarns. I'm going to make 4 half trebles. So again, on the last yarn over of that stitch, of that colour, the golden colour, we're going to move back to cream. So just as we have been doing with our colour changes throughout, the last yarn over of the final stitch, we're going to complete it instead with the new colour that we want on our hook. Now at this stage, we carried our cream and our lemon throughout, but we don't now want to carry on carrying our golden. We can just leave that hanging down behind the work. So this is our wrong side on the back of the work. Here we have our tail end where we joined, and then our long sort of working yarn. On the front of the work, we're going to keep it nice and clean. So I'm now going to make 5 half trebles in cream. And making sure that I carry the lemon. Changing back to lemon on the last yarn over, and then I'm going to work 14 half trebles in lemon. So on the 14th half treble in lemon, I'm going to change back to cream. And again, because I've worked for quite a while there without changing any colours, I'm just going to gently pull on the cream yarn before I change to it. And then the final 2 stitches of this pattern repeat are 2 half trebles in cream. So again, you will be then continuing with this pattern repeat as you work along the length of your panel. But this is what one pattern repeat will look like for working row 6. We brought in our golden yarn, and now as we turn our work ready for row 7, it's going to be ready and waiting for us. So we're going to pick it up again as we reach it. And because this is now a wrong side row, we can leave our yarns hanging down on the back of the work. So for row 7, I'm going to follow the pattern instructions, changing colour as and when it's called for, until I reach the centre. And I'll just work as far as this centre again and show you how I'm going to pick up and then let the yarn sit on the front of the work, just so that you're confident that as and when you're working these golden sections, you know how to handle it. So work with me, following the pattern until we reach the centre of our flower again, when we're going to need to pick up our golden colour. Don't forget, of course, to pick up the yarn that is not currently being worked with and carry it along. So this stitch in the cream yarn is going to be the last one before we need to switch back to our golden colour. So as I said, at this stage, we're just going to pick it up again and then yarn over. And so this will cross across our work a little bit here, but as this is a wrong side row, it doesn't matter too much to us. We're just going to continue working. And again, as we did on the previous row, just for this little section, whilst we're working with our golden yarn, we're also going to carry our 2 other yarns that aren't active. So I'm going to make 6 half trebles here in golden. We're then ready on our 6th stitch to make the final yarn over in our cream yarn. So we're going to drop golden and we're going to leave it on the front of our work because, as we said, this is the wrong side. So all the slightly messy bits will sit on this side and it'll leave this side, which is our right side row, looking a little bit neater and tidier. So carry on. Work till the end of this row, following either your chart or the written instructions for your colour changes. And I will meet you at the end of this row when I've worked 1 pattern repeat, and I'll show you how it's looking. So here is how my panel is looking at the beginning of row 8. We have 1 more little section here to work with the remainder of our golden. And as you can see, we're back to a right side row. So we're going to work in our pattern, pick it up here, allow it to drop down behind the work where we can later weave in our ends, and then continue working with our 2 colours for the remainder of the row. If we take a little look ahead, this is how the full pattern repeat looks. So this is what we're working with for our longer panel. So obviously these 2 will match up as we repeat. And each time you use a little bit of golden, we're going to do the same process. So depending on the length of our panels, there are going to be times, obviously we've only had 1 instance here of the golden being attached because this is the one that's forming in the centre. But when we're working on these rows, for instance, we might have several little bobbins of our golden yarn attached at any one time. So as I said, if you're happy with it just hanging down as a long tail end behind the work, then feel free. Or if you want to wind it round a little bobbin or into a little ball and you find that a little bit easier to manage, then of course feel free to do that. But the main thing to remember is we're always working with our lemon and our cream yarns, and so we're always carrying the one there that is not being used. But our little patches of golden we're treating more as intarsia crochet, so we're only picking it up back and forth as we need it and when we reach it in the row. So there's hopefully a few tips and tricks there to help you with week 5. We've looked a little bit at our tapestry crochet techniques. So we're always going to be carrying one of the yarns. Whether we're working with our lemon or our cream, we'll always be carrying the other one. And then we've shown you in particular how we're going to treat the centers of our flowers a little bit differently and using that more intarsia style technique, winding off small bobbins each time you need them and picking them up as we go back and forth in our rows. When you've finished your week 5 panels and you've joined them on, I just want you to take a moment to celebrate the fact that we have worked all the way out from week 1 to week 5, joining our panels as we go. There is something really satisfying about knowing that you've created all of those stitches and joined them together, and now you have this lovely big size. We're nearly ready to move on to week 6 and work our border. And in a do as I say, not necessarily as I do, I would remind you that if you have lots of ends, you may want to weave them in now before we add our border. I have actually woven in all of my ends, but if you have followed any of my tutorials in the past, you'll know it's not really a forte of mine. So it's a good opportunity. We've got to week 5 before we finish off our border. Any of those loose straggly ends, weave them in, and then we've got a really lovely, beautifully finished off panel section. Next week, we're moving into working in a slightly different way. So I will join you back here next week for week 6, and I look forward to working through that part of the pattern with you.